Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at some tips for getting those patterns a little bit easier to execute, as well as especially that bit at the end when you have to transition into the landing configuration. Let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, we're sitting here in lovely Knox County Regional. For one time, we don't have a massive crosswind. We have a little gentle crosswind from the left. But as you can tell by the sock doing its happy dance here, you can tell that this one is going to be a bit of a gusty takeoff here. We're flying in the Bonanza today. One of the reasons I like the Bonanza for this particular demonstration is it's going to prove my point a little bit more accurately. So what I'm going to do is do 2 runs through the pattern. We're going to do touch and go for the first one, and we're going to do a full stop for the second one. And I'm going to show you kind of the transition here so people can kind of see my point here as far as how to sort of approach some of these. So let's go ahead and do a normal takeoff. I'm going to go ahead and deflect my controls partially to my left here, and I'm just going to keep us right on the center line. Those gusts are pretty real. It's nothing too serious. So we're flying with live weather today in order to make things a little more fun for us. That's a good speed. We're going to go ahead and take off. One of the great things I love about this plane is you got that nice G1000, so I can literally just look below me to so I'm not looking over the cockpit. That looks like we've run out of runway. We're going to go ahead and slap the gear handle off. We're going to go ahead and gently go ahead and put the flaps to the out position, and we're going to go ahead and monitor everything to make sure we're climbing up pretty smoothly at this particular point. Taking a look down, of course, I don't have a button on my controller for the cowl flaps. I desperately need to get one so that it can make my life a little bit simpler. All right, so we're going to go ahead and execute this pattern kind of, I like to call it the wrong way. So we took off, we're climbing about altitude, pattern altitude is right around 1,000 feet. We have ourselves at a substantial cabin angle. We're about 15 degrees. For those of you who've never experienced what 15 degree looks like in the real plane, it's a lot. It really, really is a lot. And when I go to take this turn in the real world, it is a staggering amount of angle that I'm putting on here. By the way, there's the really, really cool museum right down there. Got a bunch of old airplanes. And now we're turning into the pattern, and I look down, and I realize I'm 1,200 feet already. What a mess. So now I'm going to start pushing my nose down. I'm going to pull the throttle back. I'm trying to line myself up at the end of the runway here. Now everything's looking good. I've got myself down doing 140 knots. I'm trying to pull myself this way. I look at it over there one more time, trying to get back down to 1,000 feet, pulling the throttle back even further, which of course, if you're coming back from a long flight, generally you want to avoid doing that. We're getting all sorts of blown around. I got myself back down to 1,000 feet. I finally got myself back in the white arc here, and I'm still climbing and going all over the place, and I'm struggling with the throttle. And remember, of course, you're supposed to be making your communications here and everything. Yes, we're technically being somewhat legal here, but we're really, really struggling to keep everything nice and stable here. We're going to beam the numbers. Of course, we slapped in the landing gear. We popped down the first notch of flaps. We try to push the nose of the plane down to the correct one. Of course, when those flaps come down in the real world, not so much in flight sim, you're immediately going to pitch. And of course, when the landing gear come down in the real world, you're also going to pitch, depending on the type of airplane, and of course, depending on the center of gravity and all that good stuff. But it's going to have a pitch moment. So then you look out the window, you see that you're at your 45 beam. You go ahead and take your nice gentle left, you coordinate everything, you pop down that next notch of flaps. You're kind of doing one of these things. You might hear the beep, 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 beep. Have the stall warning here, and immediately remember how dangerous it is when you take this turn in the real world. You kind of look yourself down there, you're not 100% sure, you're kind of looking out the window, you're doing about 90, which is about the speed we need to be. You're sitting there fitzing with the throttle, you kind of bring yourself around here. We're pretty much right on the right speed here, about 83, 84, 85 knots for Bonanza, and we're pretty much lined up. We're kind of a little off to the side. And remember, this whole time we've been fitzing with the throttle, and we've been fitzing with, the fitzing is a technical airplane term. It's right in the FAR, by the way. And you kind of finally got this thing nice and stabilized. Now you can see we're slightly high here, but again, nothing too bad. The people on the ground are just watching you do your normal kind of approach. So we're going to go ahead and do a touch and go here. I'm going to go ahead and reduce a little bit of power. I'm not in time acceleration. It's just that turbulent. We're just going to kind of make it work here. And again, one of the things I like about the Bonanza is it's pretty good in turbulence, but it does become a slightly stiff ride. You can actually look down at my controls. I'm basically not moving them. That's just how turbulent it is. All right, we get ourselves lined up at that big old number 31. We're going to go ahead and drop that left wing just a little bit, pull down the power. And we're just going to play keep away with the ground for just a minute here. You wouldn't get that much float in a real Bonanza. Go ahead and give us a little bit of left controls. We're going to pop down to take off flaps, apply full power. And now we're going to do the whole process again. So let's get ourselves going. 70's plenty. We're going to go ahead and take off. And now we're going to relax. So the big thing I've learned, especially as I've been flying for a little while in the real world now, is to do one thing at a time. So we're clear of the runway. I'm going to push the flap handle up. I'm going to go put my gear handle up nice and smoothly, and I'm going to confirm that everybody works the way that they want to do. The next thing I'm going to do, which is going to be a little bit scandalous here, is I'm actually going to reduce my power to 25 inches here. Now, most of you are probably sitting there, you need full power, you've got to get altitude. Yes, I need to get altitude. But the reality is I have so much excess of power, I'm still at a 10-degree here, and I'm beyond my VY speed. Now I'm at 700 feet. I'm going to go ahead and execute myself a nice left turn. I'm going to take my time. Again, I'm going to try to avoid any sort of pitch changes. I'm just going to look out the window here as we take that nice little turn. Check back at my controls. I'm getting a little fast. And now we can see a pattern altitude. And I'm going to pull my throttle back to about half power. And in a Bonanza, you can actually pull it back even further here. So I usually do about 11 to between 10 and 15 inches, depending on the plane, depending on the drag. Now you'll notice that after I've reduced my power substantially, again, a Bonanza is a very high performance plane. You'll notice that as I'm taking this time line, I'm being very, very leisurely here. You know, I'm got about 1,000 feet, about TPA, but look at how low my power is, and look at how low my speed is. You know, because I don't have a lot of excess power here, I'm not going to be really climbing too much. It's just going to be a matter of kind of organizing myself. So I'm going to keep cruising down to the end of the runway here. This is a good time, of course, to make some quick adjustments to any of your trim. And you can see I'm safely within the white arc. I'm not doing anything excessive. I'm just doing gentle turns here, using the power to control my altitude. So there's the numbers. I'm going to start by pulling the throttle back just a little bit. As the airplane slows down, the nose is going to come down. I'm going to go ahead and put my landing gear down next. I'm going to let the plane slow down even more. But notice, I'm just doing one thing at a time. We're still going to hold at 500 feet. I'm going to stabilize the plane. I'm going to put down that next click of flaps. And that's going to start causing the plane to slow down. But since I waited and activated the flaps and the gear separately, it's going to make this a much easier turn. So now we're going to go ahead and take our turn onto final here. I'm going to start slowly feeding a little bit of power as the drag starts to take over as we start getting closer to our approach speed. And again, just doing this nice and leisurely here. Kind of fling us around here. I'm not doing any configuration changes in my turn here. I'm going to just go ahead and bring us around this way. Now, one of the nice advantages, because I only have one click of flaps in right now, is the fact that I don't have as much drag, which is going to reduce the impact of turbulence on me. All right, we're going to go ahead and swing ourselves out of final. We'll get ourselves back to about 81, 82 knots. A little easier on the rudder, and we're going to have to pull back just a little bit to finish that up. Now you can see I'm already stabilized on my correct speed. I'm going to stabilize myself on my final, and then I'm going to go ahead and pop in that last notch of flaps. Now, once that notch of flaps kicks in the real world, you're going to get a major spike of drag. It's nothing like it is in Flight Sim, where it basically makes your nose kind of stabilize a little bit. But you notice that as I made that transition, because I did everything kind of one at a time, it made this a much easier approach. You'll notice I haven't had to touch my trim since after I did my initial climb. So now the aircraft is pretty stable. We're going to get bounced around in the bumps here. We're just going to allow it to do that. We can always add a little bit of power, but again, I'm going to keep it pretty steady. You can see we're right on speed here. I don't need to do anything funky. Wow, that's turbulence. Yeah, in the real world, it gets bumpy, but it doesn't get that bad. You can see we're heading down to the end of the runway here. The big old number 31, I'm going to go ahead and press a little bit of right rudder, and I'm just taking my time. All right, I've got the runway made. I'm going to pull the throttle almost all the way back and give it about 5 extra RPM there. I'm going to hold my nose over the runway, and again, a little bit of left foot there because of that crosswind. We're just going to settle down onto the runway and apply the brakes smoothly. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad for 21 knots of wind. Not bad at all. So the key thing there, and the thing I want everybody to take away from in the video, is take your time and do one thing at a time. Even though the whole traffic pattern took me the exact amount of time for each run, you'll notice that my second run, it was a minimum amount of effort on my part. I did a thing, I waited. I did a thing, I waited. I actually had more time to be able to think things through and concentrate on things like my communication, watching out for traffic, and kind of getting everything else with the airplane all ready to go, rather than going bang, 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 bang. You know, that little bit of reduction in power in the beginning to help settle down when I started getting close to my altitude, you know, popping the flaps and gear down separately really made a big difference there. And I remember when I was in flight training that I was always told, you put the flaps down for each turn. Yeah, great. A configuration change when you're a little bit slow. That seems safe. But other than that, enjoy.